Thanks, Tony, and thanks, Ralph. As Tony indicated, I'm Chris Hager. I'm with Langen Engineering and Environmental Services. I also serve as the ULI, the Urban Land Institute Chair for the Philadelphia District Council, which also services South Jersey. And separate to that, was fortunate to serve on the ULI Sandy Advisory Services Panel that was formed to look at long-term resiliency and adaptability. The Governor Florio, was also involved with us in that panel. That's really what I want to focus on a little bit today. I'll share some of the insights and recommendations of that panel as they particularly relate to sort of shaping future design, serving as guiding principles to the Resilience 2.0, and also some of the information that Ralph talked about. So, from the ULI panel, we really focused on, what I'll focus on sort of are the designing differently portions, but our purpose was to set guiding principles, not to rebuild, and not to bounce back, but rather bounce forward. Bouncing back really implied to us as we sat there as a panel, really getting back what we had. And we wanted to focus on not what was, but what could possibly be. To really enhance the systems and better withstand future stresses. And I'll talk about that in a little more detail. We also, constantly had to remind ourselves it's not all about flooding, or it's not all about sea level rise. It's climate change, it's other stresses that we really need to start to take into account in our future designs, future planning. And we didn't just want it to apply. We didn't want our recommendations just to apply to a coastal typology or geology or geography. We wanted it to be able to be applied nationwide, worldwide, as best practices that should be followed for good, resilient design. And once again, we had to constantly remind ourselves of that as we were sort of looking at this devastation that was caused from Sandy. And designing differently is really, that is going to challenge us and needs to challenge us to look at what could happen and not just what just happened. And it even goes beyond just being proactive versus reactive. It's really thinking about things differently. There were some comments, interestingly, about the Performing Arts Center and sort of how it takes all aspects of all aspects to come up with the right decisions. And one of the things that intrigued me recently, I'm starting to hear more of STEAM rather than STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, math, but you put the A in, which is art, and you have really sort of the full solution. And I've really started to become intrigued with that. And there was actually a great study that was done by New York, the Metropolitan Museum of Art on rising currents. If you haven't seen that, that's definitely worth a look. It was Rising Currents Protects New York Waterfronts. I'll get to the ULI recommendations now. We had 23 specific recommendations that focused on, we carved them into land use and development, infrastructure, technology, and capacity, finance, investment, and insurance, and leadership and governance. So I want to quickly hit on 9 that are sort of design related and get into the guiding principles of future designs and planning. And these particularly come from the land use and development and then the infrastructure section. And I'll give you, with each one, I'll give you sort of a little bit of what our thought was on that. So for the land use section, recommendation number 2, promote regional coordination. And you heard a lot about that earlier today. But our focus was really that interconnected infrastructure networks require beyond the boundaries planning, and they require a regional approach. And water systems, electric systems, breakwaters and reefs, these are all great examples. So it was really on that beyond the boundaries planning and design. Number 3, identify those parts of the region to protect and invest in that are critical to the regional economy, culture, health, safety, and welfare. Seems pretty straightforward. What really catches my eye on that one, and was purposeful, was the word culture. And really us considering our unique culture and historic heritage and sites that we really need to take into account in future designs when we're planning for resiliency. Number 5, use defined land typologies in a cost-benefit analysis to identify less vulnerable value zones for long-term planning and public spending. And this gets into the planning and looking at overlay zones and sort of your flooding and naturally sensitive areas, so that you can start to consider the value of continuing the current use and the cost to do so. On the infrastructure, technology, and capacity, we had several that are sort of design related. Develop a regional infrastructure vision, review it regularly, and set priorities. And this really had to do a little bit with land use number 2 that I talked about, sort of the interconnectedness and beyond the boundaries planning. And it also, focuses on looking at the region itself as a coherent whole, and not a series of independent parts. Number 7, considering long-term resiliency when evaluating rebuilding strategies. We sort of looked at the criticality of need, protecting market value, protecting potential future market value that could possibly be created. And it also looked at at considering the multiple sources of risk. And this was sort of dual purpose, and I'll get into that in a minute, sort of having these infrastructure components serve a dual purpose. And then also considering the layers of risk, which that starts to get into the redundancy that we want to consider. Number 8, design protective infrastructure to do more than protect. And this really focuses on sort of the economic value and ecological value that our infrastructure can serve. And there's some great examples throughout Europe where flood dikes are also serve the purpose of great public waterfront spaces. They enhance sort of and create new development opportunities and really create great spaces. Similarly, rail berms serving as flood protection dikes. Number 9, explore the potential for soft systems, which I think you'll hear more about in the upcoming presentation from Bree. And that gets into the hard and soft infrastructure. And there's certainly stormwater and flood protection are primary examples. My comment with that is really, those soft systems are almost always very engineered. So don't let their natural appearance fool you. Allow for a safe failure of some non-critical infrastructure systems. And this is important to recognize that certain systems can fail and be interrupted. And that's okay if it's planned for. And lastly, I'll close number 11, create infrastructure recovery plans for quick partial service restoration. And really, that deals with the system design and making sure that the systems are designed to accommodate those priorities that can quickly be set in place in the wake of a disaster, and that those priorities be set by the various stakeholders. We can talk further during the question and answer session. We do have a couple of the after Sandy ULI reports that I think we'll hand out for people who get their questions selected.